I don't think anybody is more surprised about this purchase than I am. Once again, I saved up for a bit and was able to make a somewhat sizable purchase, investing in a game that I honestly did not think I would ever get into for a whole bunch of reasons that if you follow the channel at all, you'll already know. And if you don't, well, I'll mention. I am not a D&D guy. I have not been a D&D guy pretty much my entire gaming life. But, D&D is ubiquitous. I did discover a few years back Dungeon Crawl Classics, which I really enjoy. And to me, it's my usual saying is it's what if D&D was actually fun. And in that vein, I have decided to try out a game that's been getting a lot of buzz, and that is Shadowdark from the Arcane Library. Now, Shadowdark is, from my understanding, sort of a bridge between 5th edition D&D and the so-called OSR. And you may, if you've watched my videos, know that I don't put a heck of a lot of stock in the OSR for various reasons. I mean, not the least of which is that it really harkens back to old D&D, and I didn't like old D&D. I also don't like new D&D. So why would I get this? It does seem like this has some of the things that I like from Dungeon Crawl Classics, but is stripped down more to its essentials. I know from what I understand, I say I know, from what I understand, it takes elements of several other games, obviously D&D being sort of a core thing, but other games, I think Into the Odd, Index Card RPG, various things like that. It's got they don't call them funnels, there's some other word for it, but it's basically like the funnel from DCC for your 0 level characters. But it's all done in the idea of being a stripped down sort of back to basics game. Here's some credits, which I think are showing up. And I figure at different times I've had folks who've said, oh, I really want to play D&D. And especially I've had some, younger acquaintances who only know D&D through its cultural references and have said, I want to try D&D. And I'm not going to run 5e. I swore off Dungeons and Dragons back around 2000, 2001, somewhere in that area. And then in spite of my having sworn it off, I went back and I played 5e a couple of years back. And it reminded me of all the reasons why I had sworn it off. I don't like a lot about it. And you can argue, and you would not be wrong, that DCC is very close. And it is very close, but the devil's in the details. I know that DCC is largely a riff on 3rd edition, but has its own things. And it's those things that make it sort of special. And just what I have seen from Shadowdark makes me think that it is, close enough to D&D, but doesn't have the things that I can't even put my finger on necessarily what it is, but doesn't have the things that bug me. We'll see. I'm going to read through the rules. They are as you can see, it's large print. It's not going to take a long time for me to read these, likely. Just a matter of focus. But I kind of like having a more stripped down rule set. And as much as I love DCC, I feel like I stumbled over that. But as much as I love this game, and I do, it's got a kind of everything in the kitchen sink vibe. The magic system is so bizarre and fun, but it's a lot. And Could I just pick up and run a DCC game? Yeah, probably, but it would probably end up being a funnel. If I want to run anything more than that, I got to put a little bit more effort, a little bit more time, and there is more of a learning curve with the game. Still fun, and I think worth it in a way that versions of D&D I've played have not been. 3rd edition, 5th edition, 2nd edition, original Dungeons and Dragons, Beck Me. I've never enjoyed. I've played them, and I always feel like any joy I get out of them is in spite of the game. And that old saying of it's not the game, it's the group that you're playing with. I gamed with people that I loved playing games with, and that I gamed in multiple different campaigns with, and we played D&D, and I hated it. And I felt the whole time like the system was a weight around my neck. I don't feel that with DCC. When I have run this and when I've played this, it's been fun. But I also talk sometimes about how I see DCC as a third-person game. It's more about, like with Paranoia, it's more about watching the fun things happen to your characters as opposed to getting into their heads and thinking about how they perceive things. To me, that's how I take it. And I don't know if Shadowdark will fit quite that way or not. I'm not sure. But I am interested in checking it out, and I'm hoping maybe I can run some Shadowdark for folks who want to play D&D but are willing to try something that's just slightly off, using something like Into the Weird and Wild. And possibly I've been thinking about trying to run through some classic D&D modules with these. Obviously, I would heavily modify them because D&D modules, like a lot of modules from other games, even Call of Cthulhu, as much as I love Call of Cthulhu, a lot of the old 80s modules from Call of Cthulhu feel like D&D adventures in that there's a whole bunch of random monsters in a house for some reason, which doesn't make any sense. So anyway, Shadowdark, I don't know. We'll check it out. I have seen this game. Obviously, it's gotten a lot of praise. There's been a lot of praise, and alongside it, right from the beginning, there's been a lot of negative things said about it. And the negative things I've seen said about it just make me scratch my head, because a lot of people will in the same breath say, well, there's nothing original. You should just go to old school essentials or something like that. I'm like, did you hear what you just said? Or, oh, there's nothing original in this. Why don't you use, basic fantasy? Does not compute. The folks behind this have never claimed that this was an original, game. Systems are not, game mechanics are not copyrightable, from what I understand. I'm not a lawyer. They have taken, and they said this right from the beginning, they've taken elements from 5th edition and they have come at it with a more old school, in whatever that means, vibe. I also don't put a lot of stock in the old school as a philosophy. I've seen a lot of people say, oh, this is the way they used to play. And yet it's not the way anyone I know from that era ever talked about playing the game. Now, did they? Maybe. Some people did. I know, I think Coville did a good video on this, 6 months or so ago from when I'm recording this, talking about how right from the beginning, people were playing it in very different ways because the original Dungeons and Dragons was not a cohesive rule system. It was just essentially cobbled together house rules from a miniatures game. And so right from the beginning, people had to fill in their own blanks to make it work at home. And so everybody did that in their own way. And right from the beginning, people all over were playing the game in different ways. And I think that that has always been true. And certainly from when I talk to people who used to game in the 70s and 80s, and they talk about how they used to play and how it used to work, it's nothing like what I see some of the OSR people go on about. And that's nothing like what they played, not even remotely. So, was it how Gary Gygax played? Maybe. I don't know. And you know what? I don't care. Not only because I wasn't a D&D fan, I'm not a D&D fan, but also because Gary Gygax is just a guy. Gygax and Arneson, they were just guys. They were just doing the thing that they wanted to do at their house for fun, at their game store for fun. I don't care what they did. If it's not how I want to play it, then it doesn't matter. They're not saints. They're not divine instruments. Why would I care how they played? That was their home, their table, their game store. I don't care how you play at your house. I'm sure it's different than how I play at my house. And that's okay. We can still enjoy the hobby. We can still chat about it. That's all fine. So anyway, I think a lot of the flack that this game has gotten is BS. It's people who, they have their own idea of what is or shouldn't be, and it doesn't matter if logic is thrown out the window when complaining. I don't know. Again, I haven't read the game. I haven't played it. I have heard people who seem sane, reasonable, rational people with good ideas, who I often agree with, who've said it's a pretty good game. So I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to read it. And this may be one of the games I try to bring to the table in 2025. We'll see. We'll see. So on to... I didn't just buy this. I bought some other stuff, so I'm going to record another video here in a moment, but I guess for you it'll be a little while. Until next time, take care.